welcome to your daily Gameface. I am Dr. Kim Lannon, and I'm here with Lou, who just actually did his job and signed me in. He pointed me in on time this time.
Then I can't fade the music. Something's got to give
God,
with that signal.
I know. The music was it was talking over me.
Yeah.
It was going over me.
Yep.
Good morning.
I only get so many hands.
Good morning.
Good morning. What?
I love coming here. I was thinking last night, I'm like, I could just do a StreamYard in today.
Get to let a lot of aggression out before the show. Is that what you like?
I didn't give you anything this morning.
The only aspect of your life where you don't hold back
is when I come to see you.
Yep.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Did I say anything mean to you this morning? No. Are you thinking about it?
I don't know, mean.
What did I say to you this morning?
You're not ready.
Because you were not ready. You
were early.
You had nothing up. You had no screen up. You had nothing ready.
I didn't have.
This is my plate.
That's inaccurate. I had plenty ready. I just didn't have it all ready.
You didn't have anything to do with me ready.
I had a lot to do with you ready.
I have to do, this is going to be sort of a joke about this, but What am I paying you for? Oh, literally, you just sent me a bill, and I was like, wow, God, that's from like last year.
Yeah, I'm still billing. The billing department at my production company is less than competent.
I was laughing when I saw that.
I'm still billing 2023 in a couple of cases.
You're killing me.
Yeah. Well,
God, I was laughing then when it came in. I was like, this is going to be a whopper doozy.
Yep.
I got to monetize. This is killing me. This is killing me. Send money this way.
Usually I do like every 2 months, and I looked this time, it was like 4 months.
It was like, oh my God. I know. I was waiting. I was hesitant to open my email. I was like, ugh. Anyway, nobody knows what we're talking about. But anyway, nonetheless.
My incompetence. That's what we're talking about.
We're talking about losing confidence this morning of like, I come in, there's no screen up. I'm not ready. Nothing plugged in. I'm like, hello. I should have just StreamYard in. I just told Lou that I was thinking about just bypassing the show and just kept driving to the beach. And then you made a good point. You're like, I could have stayed at the beach.
Yeah.
Lou has the lucky house on the beach. You're literally on the beach.
Pretty close.
But here's the thing is that no one heard about us talking about last week is that if there's a hurricane or there's something bad storm-wise, you can't get off your island. That's a problem. There's one bridge and that's
one bridge.
Yep. And there's a lot of people on that island.
Yep.
So that's the downside of living there.
Yeah, and the bridge broke this spring.
Oh yeah, I knew that. Well, the other downside is that you have
that really drove it home because that bridge could have been down for a week, maybe more. And then what?
You could have swam across. Could have taken a boat.
Not in the Parker River.
I was gonna say the other. Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
The other problem with your area of living is that you have a lot of greenheads, which are those nasty little bitey flies that are awful.
Yep.
So anyway, good morning. Welcome to my show.
See, focus on the positive things.
Yes. You have snowy owls.
Okay.
But not till November.
Yeah.
Great turnout last week for my show.
Yes.
I love that. Thank you, everybody, for
rightfully so. It was a great show.
I know, and post show, like another great outcome of more people watching and the reels and all that. So, wow, thank you.
It was excellent. Yeah, last week's show was excellent.
We love Tammy.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I haven't even gotten a chance to catch up with Tammy because it's been so busy, and because it's a holiday week. So, I
was going to ask you, are we doing a podcast?
I haven't even had 2 seconds to talk to her. I know. So, everybody that's listening from last week. I'm going to try to get Tammy to do a monthly. I've decided on the name of it already.
Excellent.
Yes, I have. Yeah. She hasn't agreed. I haven't talked to her about it, but I've decided it's going to be Cat Chat.
Cat Chat. I like that.
You're right.
I do. I like
Cat Chat with Kim and Tammy.
Cat Chat.
Right.
Yep.
So she doesn't know this yet. So I'm going to sell her on it. It's coming.
Cat Chat, you got it with the name.
I know, right?
I was go for the name.
I know. I thought of it on when I left the building last week. I'm like, Cat Chat, monthly chat with Kim and Tammy. So anyway, well, part of this wonderful mood today that I'm in is it's 9,000 degrees out, which is my kind of weather, which is too bad because tomorrow when I actually have off, guess what? It's gonna rain.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it never is nice when I'm off. This is the story of my life.
Well, it helps you slow down, helps you calm down.
no, I want to be at the beach or I want to be outside doing things. And
Yep.
so it does help me do things when I have rainy days to be able to then do things. Because then I don't, it's that psychological phenomenon that actually is that you feel less guilty about doing things inside when it's nice, when it's not nice out, because then you can, it's like, oh, well, it's not nice. So I can be inside and doing things. And I get a lot done. I get rid of 11 bags at Savers at the Epilepsy Foundation 2 weekends ago.
It's a day off, which is probably as rare for you as it is for me.
It is.
You can't be doing that kind of stuff.
Oh, but that makes me happy.
Oh, okay.
Because I cleaned out 2 very extensively packed in closets that were like, now, wow, you could either leave it like that or buy more crap.
Oh, both. Yeah. Get rid of it and buy more.
No, I'm trying not to do that because I don't need more. I got rid of lots of stuff. It's just ridiculous. I got to keep doing that Swedish death clean. Swedish death clean, I'm telling you.
I'm rotating. I'm in a thrifting binge and getting rid of stuff and getting new stuff.
I've noticed your shirts.
Yeah.
They're very attractive.
Yeah.
Although, you're going to kill me. Although they're very attractive, they are a little dated.
Oh. Yeah.
I'm just saying. They're not from 2024. They're like 1984.
Okay. See? I have no clue about this sort of thing.
Well, today's is maybe 1991.
Okay.
I'm giving you a couple of years.
It's a good year.
Last year was 1984. Okay. I mean, last week was
1984.
Yes.
Okay. I can't remember what I was wearing last week.
Well, I can.
I'm a 1991 kind of guy.
Well, that you are in full 1991 mode today.
Yep.
I will tell you that.
It's a good year.
What is he saying? Leave Lou alone.
It's okay, John. I got this.
Yeah. You do better with me than he does about this stuff.
I got this. I'm okay.
He just falls apart. So anyway, so the show last week was great. And I actually know, haven't talked to Tammy, but I know that people did actually donate and give to Catio Town. And I know that, they had their thing going to the 30th. So that was really good. Anyway, so now let's get on to psychology.
Can I send my 2 cats there?
Lou, you're fired.
Found out mine has one of mine has a Bengal background and one of mine has a Maine Coon. Is it Maine Coon?
No. Maine Coon does not count as that. You only found out that because of me.
No, they told me all along, but I didn't believe it because
but when I saw your picture last week, I said that cat has Maine Coon.
You confirmed it, yeah.
What's his name?
Astro.
Oh yeah, I love that. The cat is beautiful.
Oh, he's beautiful.
Right. Okay, so back to psychology.
Dumb as a stump, but he's beautiful.
Stop. So many things could be said here. So
fair enough.
let's just leave the cat alone.
Yep.
Okay. I don't have anything ready for my show. Psychology.
Yes.
Your daily game face. We're back on track to that topic.
Okay.
Can we be serious? Let's have some serious moments.
All right.
Zen. Okay. Seriously though. Okay. So I thought this week there's a couple things that have come up. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on certain things, but I want to do a little psychology pop-up kind of talk because it was on the news this morning. There's a new, and it's relevant to me because I have a client in my practice that is young with Alzheimer's, like 50s.
Yep. Which
is a rarity. And there's another new there. Now there's two new drugs out for FDA approved. Well, they're FDA approved for Alzheimer's, and they have great findings. The first one came out, my client can't use because of there's a genetic marker that it mixes with that could end up doing damage to her. But nonetheless, this new one, Kinsula, it's so new, I don't even know, but I know it's out there. So I think that's fabulous that that's out there, and it's having apparently great things are coming. So I'm hoping that will be out there. So if people are out there with, elderly folks in their life or older folks in their life that have Alzheimer's or dementia, this is a possibility for treatment that's better than what they've got. And then also people who with young, early onset of dementia or Alzheimer's. So I just want to put that out there because it is a huge breakthrough. And I think there's some more coming, but Eli Lilly is putting it out. The downside of it is it's $32,000 a year for treatment.
Wow.
So I'm not sure how that's going to go with insurance companies. And it's really hard to get the first drug that was also around the same amount. Do you hear that I'm getting feedback? Do you hear the tinny feedback that I'm getting through my mic?
Turn down your headsets a little bit, probably.
My headset's
volume in front of you. in the box.
I'm like, I don't have a headset thingy. And that was a moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I can't see that. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I'm thinking because on my other one I have a headset volume control. Sorry about that. Okay, go ahead and speak just so I can hear you.
Hello.
Okay.
Yep.
Good. All right.
Just checking to see if any other open
Yeah,
headsets are near your mic.
I just have a little tin feedback, but I'm okay. Anyway, so I think that's really great. And then what I was thinking about talking today about is two things. I wanted to talk about. I want to go back and start talking about the epidemic we really have in this country. That's such a psychological impacting disorder that we really don't talk about enough as what it is, as how I see it, is the addiction of food and how it impacts, because it's so much more than, I mean, drugs and alcohol obviously are in the mix, obviously for people putting money towards it and funding and trying to do, but really in the end of the day, we have a constant ongoing daily addiction in people way bigger, no pun intended, because we have everybody eats. And it's not like everybody does drugs and alcohol. So not to diminish that there's a drug problem or an alcohol problem or gambling problem or other problems. But I think that when we look at the underbelly of where addiction comes from as a general rule, it is heavily, all these puns, heavily weighted in the fact that your upbringing and your genetic coding and your environmental modeling is so important to look at, and then what's around you and surrounding you and how it works and how the process of addiction works, because it's the same exact, whether you're doing an opiate, whether you're drinking alcohol, whether you're a sex addict, whether you're a gambler, whether you're an overeater or an undereater, because both obesity and or anorexia or bulimia are eating disorder related, with food addiction, or addiction to the feeling of restriction of eating. They're all in the same part of the brain, and they have the same neurological receptor neurotransmitter connection, exactly the same. And I think that not enough people really talk about it. Not enough people are educated about it. Not enough medical doctors and primary cares are really talking about the reality. I mean, I see people all the time that they don't know what medications they're taking. They don't know what they do when they are taking them. They don't know why they're taking them. And, or they go in and I have a woman I'm seeing that has a very similar background to myself and wants to do all naturopathy work. And she has gone all naturopathic from all of her medications and to fix her microbiome and all that. And she's getting better as we go. But it's that same thing of when I talk to her, and even with her knowledge base, she's like, my doctor didn't tell me that about that. My doctor didn't tell me that about that. And it's about not, doctors will say, you shouldn't be that heavy, or they go with the BMI. Now she knows she's too heavy for her height and for her activity level. And she's also gone through menopause, for instance. So she knows that she's got to lose about 20 pounds to feel right for her body. And she's very frustrated with the fact that she has two doctors, an endocrinologist in her life, and she had a primary care who basically said your BMI is fine because she's in the range, but she knows she's not fine. She knows she has medical issues because of it. She there's all this stuff. So, but it's the only reason why she knows that is because she has the education behind her to know the information. Whereas I think most people really don't, because I see people all the time on a daily that have no idea. And we talk about these things. And I think food addiction, or the pieces around it, we don't even have to call it food addiction today. We can just call it the fact that we are attracted to things that comfort us and just keep us motivated to keep doing it more. And people don't understand that, wow, the more I do the same pattern of behavior, it's not just habit, it's actually the habit neurologically in your brain, because your chemicals are now trained to do that.
Right.
And we have set points in our body of where we really should be. And what we do is we bypass them. We train our brain to go bypass those things. So if a person has, say they get surgery and they have the sleeve or they have the lap band surgery, for instance, I've known many people over my I'm going into my 29th year, right? So I've known many people over those years to have those surgeries. Some minimal, and I will say minimal, have been successful to keep weight off and down. I mean, minimal. And then most people get weight off and then they build it back up. Now, there's two things that I think go into that, at least anecdotally, that I've watched, is that when they have the surgeries, for instance, they will lose the weight, but they haven't lost weight beforehand.
Right.
So what happens is doctors, to my knowledge, 20 years ago when I was doing that, this, you were required, because I used to do some work with people, like I had to counsel them, and I still do, because I always tell people, like, but they would ask the person, you got to find a counselor, because it was before the time when the doctor's office would provide a counselor. You need to find a counselor, and you have to show us that you can lose 30 or 50 pounds before we'll do the surgery. So we show that it shows that you're, motivated. So if you ever watch the show 600-Pound Life, Dr. Now, short for his full name, he will require you to go home and stay on the plan for the diet and lifestyle change. Diet is not a good, because you die while you do it, right?
Right.
So when you do lifestyle change, he has you do, exercise, and you stick to 1,200 calories a day and all these things. And if you come back over 2 or 3 months and you're progressively losing the weight, it shows the doctor that it's worthwhile to do those kinds of surgeries on you, because you have the motivation to do it. The problem is that that's also you have a lot. That's one of the reasons why that show's, I think, interesting. Not that it's popular because of that, but it's interesting because you see a lot of people, you see the problem that we have with people doing weight loss, is that they want the surgery because they think it's going to be a quick fix. They want the shot because they think it's going to be a quick fix. They want these things, but it's not, because you still have to put in the work. And again, anecdotally, I believe that people who go for the quick fixes, except for, like, there's some outliers that have done everything they can and they just can't get it, and so they need the extra bump to help them.
Right.
But most people will do instant gratification, and if they can't get it done, fast, then they don't want to do it. Or if I've had people who started, like, the shot, for instance, and they start the shot, we're talking about Ozempic and Wegovy and Mounjaro and tirzepatide and all those things. And if they haven't lost like 15 pounds in the first week, they get very discouraged. And I'm like, well, this is not how it works. But they don't realize that your brain actually has to it's retraining the brain to go to your set point, whether it's with lap band or whether it's with you doing naturally or whether you're doing it with a medication. You're training your brain to go to set point. You have to help that along. And you can't just depend on a sleeve, a band, a medication. You actually have to still exercise. And this is what doctors who are in the med spas and all that, they'll tell you that. Unfortunately, a lot of the primary care doctors that I've encountered don't tell their patients that. They just put them on the shot, or they have the lap band now. You can get those without any counseling and just go. And I'm like, cringeworthy, because they're not actually doing the teaching. Whereas when you go to some of the med spas, at least around here, which I'm very impressed with some of them, because I have some patients that go, they educate, they make it so that that you have to exercise. If you don't exercise, you're not going to be as, they literally feed the instant gratification before it comes out in the person, because they say you will only lose a pound or two here and there as you go through this. It will take you forever if you need to lose 100 or more pounds if you do not do these other things. And but it's interesting, because I have patients that I know that they're told this, and then they are like, oh, I never knew that. I'm like, yes, you did. I know you did, because I know you got the packet. Either you didn't read it, because it comes with a packet of do's and don'ts and what you should do and how you should do it and all that stuff. And they're like, oh, no, because they're waiting for the instant gratification to happen. And that doesn't work that way, because the brain has to be being nourished with good foods and nutrition, has to have less sugars, has to have more proteins. I mean, there's very specific science to this. And there has to be, hydration, because we're water babies. And we have to have exercise. And people hate exercise. And so you find that people get very frustrated. I have one client who has dropped about 70 something pounds, and then she stalled. And she's got about 35 more to go. And she has stalled for 3 or 4 months. Now, she had a very huge life event and a death in the family and all those things, so I can understand. But she stopped exercising.
Yeah.
And she was like the poster child for me to be like, oh, here's what happens. And she was doing great. And then now we've stalled. Why? No exercise, like almost down to nothing. And her food intake, she didn't change the calorie intake, but she changed the types of food and the portion sizes when she's eating. So she didn't go over 1,200 calories. She stayed between, the 700, on the shot, you have to stay between 700 and 1,200 calories. But her food quality and food type changed. So, and people think that they can, if they eat, crap, let's just make it easy, that as long as they don't go over the 1,200 calories, it's going to be fine. That's not how it works. You have to eat fuel. You have to eat appropriately. You have to eat these right things. And I found that a couple of people eat snacks and then they don't count the calories because snacks don't count. And this is a constant. So, this is not, to me, anecdotally, I think this is a constant battle. If you read stuff about other people who do this work like I do, and you see all the research and you see people's, stories out in the world, people bypass that. Oh, I picked up 3 chips. Well, that didn't count. Yes, it does count. 3 chips count because 3 kettle chips now are 110 calories. Did you know that? 5 crackers is 80 calories. But I just had 5 crackers and cheese. Well, you just had 300 calories of your 1,200 limit for you to be able to sustain a calorie deficit. So,
which didn't forestall your hunger at all.
No,
good eating is what keeps you from under the calorie count.
Right, and so people don't understand. People just have. It's not that they're just not having the education put in front of them, which is why I wanted to talk about this, because it's so important to have the knowledge of, if you want a cracker and cheese, I'm doing this whole thing with lifestyle changes right now where there's never a no. However, the next choice has to be the better choice. So if you have 5 crackers and cheese and you have 300 calories, your next choice needs to be a 300 calorie meal that has protein in it and vegetables, and probably not a carb at that point because you've just had 5 crackers that were junk crackers. I mean, those aren't the worst kind, but it's better than having like a Ritz cracker, which is all right.
But all it did was satisfy your mind. It didn't satisfy your body at all.
And that's the thing, is it didn't do anything for your rewiring of your brain to not need the next thing. And people have to really start to understand that when you have something that creates a craving in your brain, which really is creating an anticipatory effect, that even when you're not eating something, this is what happens. Your dopamine, like even if you look at something like, oh, that cake, or if you think of something, if you're thinking of a donut, if you're thinking of a piece of pizza, if you're thinking of French fries, you
pay attention to a Reese's commercial.
Yes.
Or a McDonald's commercial.
Exactly. Yeah. So even if it's subconscious, what happens when your brain is in that mode of like being in weight deficit because you're restricting, or in weight over the top, which is most people like that. It's more rare to have the anorexic. But so if we focus on just that obese, heavy set mindset, when you're in that set, you don't actually have to eat to have the pleasure center and the reward center start going for the addiction. It's already there and present. So just thinking about it, looking at it, and having such a habituated habit of eating junk, what it does is it opens the neural pathways for the dopamine to surge and for you to get a rush to anticipate, to draw you into the craving, which produces a craving. I'm giving the short and dirty version of this essentially, to then for you to go, oh, I'm going to go have that. I'm going to go pick up something and eat that, when it's not your body actually signaling you to be hungry. It's just, you're already habituated into the anticipatory effect of the dopamine opening up. Same thing that happens with opiates, same things that happens with, methamphetamine, same thing what happens with cocaine, the same exact thing. And so what you're doing is you're just, every time you feed it, it just gets more and more and more. So you want it more. And so the craving is no different for food than it is for cocaine. And people are like, really? I'm like, really? Because it's the same exact area of the brain, same exact receptors. You're just not craving cocaine. So, and I think that people make a very good justification for themselves to make it okay that, well, I'm not using cocaine, so it doesn't matter. It's not the same thing. I'm not an addict. Right. You're not an addict. You're a person that has an addiction, right? You're a person in addiction, or you're a person with addiction, and you're a person struggling with addiction, because I don't like saying you're an addict. But a person with addiction and a food addiction will not think about, wow, my brain is just pulling me towards that craving. That craving is right there. So I was having this conversation yesterday with a client about his child, his wife. His wife is not his child, but his wife brings in cookies, donuts, and what was it? Oh, cheese curls. So cookies, donuts, and cheese curls are her thing. And I guess every morning for like a few years, she was right in front of the child, who's now 5 or 6, would be having, she'd have a Coke, full sugar, right? Which bad, right? But if you're going to have a Coke, it's better to have the full sugar than the diet, because that's a whole nother piece of this. But which I used to drink diet all the time and learned my lesson about that, because it did exactly what I'm talking about. But so she would bring in that and tell the child they couldn't eat what she was eating because that was bad for them. Here's part of the problem. But then would have two or three donuts while she drank her Coke in the morning, while the kid would have, Count Chocula. Same thing, right? So, but not, and then
donuts and Coke for breakfast.
Yeah. Well, this is right. So this is, but the habituation of that problem is very present. So now apparently that pattern has stopped. But what she does is they're treats, right? And if you're not watching, you can see, if you're not watching, I'm air quoting, it's treats. So it's for special occasions. Why does it have to be a special occasion to eat a ring ding or a donut or a cheese curl?
Oh, you had to bring up ring dings.
Sorry.
Of all the things,
of all the things, a ring ding.
A big thing for me in my weight loss journey was don't have it in the house. Don't have it.
So that's to my point.
So easy.
That's to my point. So yesterday I told my client, I said to him, if we're having a problem, and because the child, so what happens? The child came at home from whatever, their school or whatever, and right at his level, someone left the bag of cheese curls. What is the 5-year-old going to want? The cheese curls, because 1, he wants them, and 2, he's been told he's not supposed to have them only for treats. And now we're going to be in a huge fight, and because that's what happens with the mother and the child. They get into a huge fight because she doesn't want him to have them, but you just put them in front of him, and you eat them, and you put them in the house, and you say no. Now, if you're doing this to a 5-year-old, this is setting up the brain to have a problem, because it's so conflicting in messages, because the hardwiring, the message from outside, the internal register of the food that makes him feel good. He knows it's like, here's all this training going into it. Now he runs upstairs, he shuts his door and won't let her in. And now they're in a fight. Now it's a grown woman and their 5-year-old having a fight over cheese curls. That all I said was, had we not brought them in the house, we wouldn't be doing this. But her remedy is, put them up on the higher shelf so he can't see them, so that she can eat them later.
Oh, no.
And it's like, you can't do that. So, she's obviously got an issue with weight and with her addiction. And instead of talking about it as a weight issue, I talk about it as an addiction issue. Instead of it being like, you're overweight, which is the feeling of shame. It's like, you have an addiction issue. This is, and it's not, I'm fully readily able to say that it runs rampant in my family. I have to watch it all the time. It's like if I was having an alcohol problem, I have to watch it. That's why I exercise and eat as clean as possible, and make as best choices as I can, because of what's, if I'm, my house is different, but if I'm out, because I know that I am a prone person to food addiction, because I have it in my genes, and I have it in the modeling that I had growing up. And I was on my drive up here today, I was thinking about the show and how to talk about this. And I remember vividly talk about children who are influenced by this stuff. There was so I lived in my gym. Did you know that?
You lived in your gym?
Yeah.
I got out of the house and lived in the gym?
No, I literally.
Oh, your gym was your house.
My huge warehouse that had, because my parents owned the gym, right? Kiss of death, right? My parents owned the gym, and they had a build out on the side to house all the gymnasts that came in to live with us and live for many years. This is probably a story that I probably haven't shared with anybody, or very few, that we had this build out so that, because we were part of the national team on the East Coast, this was many years ago. And so we had live-ins, and I had sisters all my life growing up, even though they were non-biological. I had all these girls living with me at all times, coming in and out of my home, but my home was my gym for many, many years. And on the gym wall, and it came into my head this morning. I'm like, oh, I was thinking about kids and the images and modeling. And aside from all the other messages of being a gymnast and the crazy stuff that comes with that, and poor food relationships, because I was like, oh, I'll never, even as a little kid, I remember I'm not going to have the weight issue, because I would hear my mom and dad and the other coaches always pecking at kids and their parents about weight. And I'm like, oh, I'm never going to have this, because I don't want to be under the scrutiny of this, even when I little. But there was a poster in the gym behind the bar. So you'd come into the gym, and the very first thing was this big long ramp that went up to the floor exercise. But then there was a stair drop down into this, it was an old warehouse. So with a big bay, and the big bay had the bar sets in them with a big pit. And if you turned yourself around from the bars, on the other side, there were posters on the wall, and smack in the middle, I mean, I'm telling you, it's probably as big as this wall with your mirror, with your window on it. There was a huge poster that had all these cupcakes, cakes, pizza, donuts. Like, it was just a big thing. It was very brightly colored with all these foods. Yeah. And then in the center of it, it said, once on the lips, forever on your hips. And I will never forget that. And I was driving up here today, and I've thought about it over the years here and there. And I'm thinking, that message has stuck with me all these years. And I had that in my head probably from 6 years old up for at least, when I made the national team was when I was 11, and I moved to Oregon. So I'm going to go for at least 5 or 6 years. I saw that poster, and it was in my developmental stage phase, and it's ingrained in my head. And, but that just, that changes neural pathways. So if you've got the visual images, so you're looking at now for people in this day and age, the McDonald's, the Arby's, the Wendy's commercials, you're watching late night TV, it's the Pringles, it's the same messaging that happens that I got in that poster, because TV wasn't the same back in that day. So I'd watch, and it just didn't have the same kind of commercials. But now
every third reel you scroll through, every third TikTok you scroll through, you get McDonald's, you get something. It's,
for some reason, I don't know how everybody's algorithms are like that, because I don't get that. And it must be because I'm algorithmed into something different, because you're not the only person that tells me that. I'm like, I don't see that stuff. But it could be because of the fact that I have never put in for like recipes. I know people that have recipes and food, and they, they're on they're on Wegovy or Ozempic, and they get all these recipes from people that have supposedly lost all this weight, but they're making these huge fattening dishes, and they're like, I lost 70 pounds on this. I'm like, no, you didn't. There's no way you did.
The phone listens, they get into your Google searches.
Right.
What you're talking about ends up in your feeds.
Right. Yeah. But even if I talk about this, I mean, everything I talked about in here usually doesn't end up on my feeds. I must have it turned off really great or something. I'm not sure. Yeah. But nonetheless, it's this imaging. So all these things make an impact on your brain. So if you've got genetics, right? And if you don't have the genetics for it, it still doesn't mean you can't get it. So that means that you're bypassing your natural set point of your body. And a person, say, who's 5'2" or 5'3", which is a common height of a woman in my practice, right? Usually maybe up to 5'6", 5'7", but usually 5'2", 5'3", with an overweight, kind of addiction issue with food. They, their BMI, they're 100 pounds over, the BMI is off the chart, right? For a doctor to be like, oh, your BMI will be fine at 24 or 25. It's like, no, your BMI needs to come down, and you're not an athlete. So it needs to come down to a healthier level, because why? It's not about being heavy or fat per se, right? God forbid we use the word. It's about, you got to get your brain back neurally connected into where your set point is of what's natural to a person who's that frame. And people have made so many excuses, social media wise, and also because people are such into the fat shaming thing of like, don't fat shame anyone. It's not about that. It's about healthy body and healthy mind. If you're overweight, nobody wants to talk about, oh, I'm overweight, but it's not about that. It's about, What are you doing to your liver? What are you doing to your kidney? What are you doing to your pancreas? What are you doing to your heart? What are you doing to your back? What are you doing to your lungs? What are you doing to your brain? What are you doing to your legs, your knees, your hips, your ankles, your feet? And then, but people get so caught up in that, well, I just have big bones. First of all, my answer to that.
Yep. There are no big bones.
Well, wait, skeletons look the same.
Yeah.
Certainly there's people who have more density to their bodies. They're more, they can have a thicker body build. There's body types, ectomorph, endomorphs, mesomorphs, things like that. But in general, it's just finding excuses. And the bottom line is we still have to come back to the brain chemistry of how to do this. Hi, Abby.
This is the basic thing with everything, isn't it? People are unwilling to accept responsibility for their outcomes.
Yeah. Well,
I have big bones. It's not my fault I'm big.
It's genetics, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think that it's to not place the blame even on that people don't take responsibility, is that people aren't taught that there needs to be a responsibility for it, because that's not part of the storyline growing up with people. The storyline, and this can go for a lot of things, the lack of accountability and responsibility goes towards, we're not teaching and modeling for that from the get-go. And now I would say when I was growing up, it was over taught to an ad nauseum point where it made me go the other way. Right. But now I think it's the other way, where it's not even, it's not in existence, because people are so about, don't talk about it. Don't do anything to make someone feel bad. Well, God forbid, you have to be honest with someone. So how do you do that? You have to talk about it. So the way I'm trying to talk about it with people is, you have to do something for your health. You don't have to, I don't care if someone's skinny. I'm looking at how do you reset your neural pathways so that you have an adjustment to being able to maintain a lifestyle that's going to lifestyle you into your 90s, not 45. Right. As you know, one of my best friends, he passed away in my home at age 46 of a massive heart attack. Right. Because he was obese. And it was not because he was obese only. It was the obesity hand in hand came with diabetes, loss of eyesight, liver failure, renal failure, kidney failure, over many years of damage to his body. And I just kept saying, you got to have healthy, you got to get up and move. You got to, it was never did it come up that you're fat. It was obvious, right? I don't need to say that. It's like, you've got to get healthy, and I've said 3 days before, I said to him, you're going to have a heart attack. And unfortunately, that's what happened. God love him and rest his soul. But, and so it sticks with me. So it's a passion of mine to make sure that you don't have to be skinny. You have to be healthy. Right. And if you're not making good choices, you're making a brain choice. Just like if you use too many opiates, it's the same problem. The more opiates you have, the more likely you're going to die. The more food you eat, the heavier you get, or not everybody has to be heavy to not have a bad lifestyle inside. People have diabetes and they're not heavy. People think, oh, it's because they're heavy. No, you can be diabetic and be the right BMI. That's a totally different situation. It's about what you're eating. It's a neural pathway issue, because you're getting your dopamine in your brain to a point where you don't even have to be eating anything. It's already churning to drive you to crave stuff to fill your space, because you're emotional, and most people do things out of emotion. If you're an opiate user, if you're a drinker, if you're a gambler, if you're a sex addict, that's out of emotion. If you're an overeater, if you're an undereater, those are all about emotions. You're eating from emotional space. And people act like, well, I eat because I have emotional stuff. Yeah, that's everybody. Yeah. That's why. If you're eating within a lifestyle of normal, bell curve normal, then you're probably not eating out of that emotion, because you've trained your brain to do hungry, angry, lonely, tired, right? You don't eat out of ALT, you eat out of hunger. But if you're not in that, like most Americans that I see, know, and I watch and out in the world, and they're writing about all these things, they're eating out of emotion. They do drugs out of emotion.
And this gets spherical.
There's a lack of emotional fulfillment in the person. And instead of doing the work to get to what's going on, to stop the behavior, they just go right to the thing that feeds it. No pun intended.
And this gets spherical, doesn't it? We did the show a few weeks ago. Love the show where we were talking about anxiety and food, and you are what you eat. And you contribute to this, and it feeds on itself.
Well, exactly. And it's so hard not to have puns about that, right?
Yeah.
It keeps looping. And it's and you don't learn that at 16 years old. You don't. And so people will say, well, I didn't have this problem until I had something traumatic happen in my 20s. You maybe the trauma triggered it, but you were already there.
Yeah.
You were just, that's just like when people say, I didn't have an opiate problem until I broke my back. Right. But it was still there. It was waiting in wait. It's not like, because there's plenty of people. And this one I can
because
say
your back's okay, you still have the problem.
Right.
So that's not the connection.
Right.
There's an underlying current here.
Right. Well, and the thing is that if you have a predisposition genetically to certain things, you're going to be more likely to push that way. Right. And if you have modeling towards that, you're going to be more likely to go that way. So, and here I was going to make it for a personal example is like, well, yeah, I have the poor relationship with food, which has made me have to do the work that I'm doing, which is what I teach people, versus I don't have drug addiction. Like if someone gave me, obviously for surgery, if they gave me morphine or they gave me Vicodin and whatever, I don't then within 5 days, like some people report, well, I'm hooked now, right?
Yeah.
Or after, that's not a thing. So it's like if you're genetically predisposed, or alcohol, some people are just genetically, just wiped out on that on both sides of their family of, you're probably going to have it. And as soon as you pick up something, you're going to really like it. And then that's going to go for that. Same thing with sex. People, I see this in younger people all the time now. They, instead of food, they'll use sex because it's an emotional fulfillment. And then they may use food. It's usually a dual diagnostic of they use food and sex. Because they're getting the emotional void met through those things, but it never fills the cup up enough to make it enough. So they have to keep going back to the well for more. That's because the brain is in that anticipatory mode that you've trained the neural pathways to actually just crave it. And you feed the craving by just going to the source without thinking mindfully about what am I doing?
Yeah.
And it's across the board. I mean, you could fill it in with any of these things, but I'm thinking of examples where I see all the time that this is what goes on. And it's again coming down to understand, you don't have to be a neuroscientist. You don't have to be me. You don't have to be a doctor. You just have to be educated about your own self, that if you continue to do a pattern behavior that is damaging to yourself, it's going to lead to, you don't have to do the damaging behavior to get the response in your brain to pull you towards the behavior over and over again. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So I think that's my drive home point today is you have to know that pattern, that's what's happening. And so when people say, I can't stop, yes, you can. Because if you can start, you can stop. Anything you can start, you can stop. Anything you've learned, you can unlearn and relearn something else.
Well, again, that's accepting responsibility, which people are reluctant to do.
Right. And so interesting, that piece of the responsibility and accountability, I would make a case for the fact that just like anything else, we are trained to do that. Whereas like I said, I was trained to have responsibility and accountability. Many people are not trained to have responsibility and accountability.
There's not that connection between action and consequence, which is the basic teaching. That's teaching 101,
right?
Parenting 101.
Right.
Teach action and consequence.
Right. And there has to be natural consequences that I think work better than a lot of times the other consequences, because by the time you get to giving consequences out that are not natural, it's too late.
Yeah, no.
So if you're, you've always said this, and I say this too, is that you can't teach you can't fix a 16-year-old problem at 16. Nope. It has to be at 6. And so by the time that person gets there, it's too late. And if they're in their 20s and 30s and 40s, and I'm seeing them in my office, we're going back and doing work to help with what was going on back when they were in their under 10 years old spots, to fix that spot, which we can't undo, but we can go back and sort of reparent it. I do a lot of reparenting. And
you can't create parenting. You can't create consequences. You have to let the consequences happen.
Right.
Right. I mean, you don't want them running into a bridge abutment, right?
No.
You want to control what the consequences are, but you don't shield them from every consequence.
Well, and I think that's right.
Creating a punishment, creating a consequence, and creating a punishment never works.
Well, right. And I think that giving a consequence for something like is fine. especially in youth, because you have to teach good from bad, right from wrong, and all those things. However, I think that I sort of think that what you're talking about is like later on. It's you can't create the consequence. I mean, certainly you can put in place some boundaries and barriers, which I think is important for people.
But it's about this lesson
Right.
of not having control and not having control. When you're punished, when the kid feels punished,
Right.
they think it's out of their control.
Right.
When they suffer a consequence, that's hopefully they make the connection that was under their control.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and I think that the control piece is huge because,
well, like with my kids early with bedtime, they were arguing about bedtime, and it's like, all right, but you're going to school in the morning. You want to stay up, but you're going to school in the morning. That was a consequence. So whatever, they stayed up late once or twice, suffered a consequence because of it, and moved on.
But see, here's the difference between what I see with you doing that, and I know you follow through, is the follow through.
Yes, exactly.
Many people, and this is, give me any example of anything. Many people don't give the follow through to this because, and I see this all the time, the feeling of having to work at that path and stay on the path. I can't tell you how many times in my career I've heard people say, parents say, oh, but that's so much effort. I just don't want the fight and I'm too tired. And you know what happens? They're training you how to treat them.
Yep.
And that's a brain train. You're brain training your child or your adolescent or your adult into how to maneuver with a coping strategy of how to know you well enough to know that you will not follow through. And then they know intellectually on some level that that's not the right thing to do, but they'll bypass you knowing that you've said no, or you've said the limit, and you'll forget, or you won't follow through, or you'll give back the phone because it's too irritating because the kid will push at you, or they'll say, just give me another piece of cake. Just give me another piece of cake. Just give me another piece of cake. Or the parent will feel so bad because they feel guilty for something or whatever, or feel like the child's got, so they'll, talk about food, right? They'll overfeed. They feed that love is food. That's the biggest mistake you can make to the brain. I'm not talking about personal. It's like, do not feed your love. That's not love.
Yep.
It's like when I'm helping parents with their kids when they're little, like, do not do rewards outside of stickers and, tchotchkes and little prizes for like great things. Spending time together, going to a movie, like that's good reward stuff. When you feed a child reward by food, you're doing the setup for addiction.
That's crazy. Yeah.
And people do it all the time. Oh, you did great today. We'll go to McDonald's. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
But that's what people do. And it's like, oh, but it's just a kid. It's not a big deal. That's the training ground.
Yep.
That's the training ground for the problem in now we have to do all these things. And so that jumps me forward to adulting, that when you have people who are now using all of the medications, which I have 12 people in my practice currently on, they're all doing a lifestyle plan with me, right? They're all doing this. Because here's the thing, when you do these medications, just like anything else, like if you're on insulin, if you're taking migraine medication, if you're taking medication for your thyroid, if you're taking medication for cholesterol, whatever it is, you still have to be on a maintained, hi, Bob Reader. You have to maintain your ability to manage that.
Yep.
And so therefore, Bob Reader just made me lose my train of thought. Did you see that? I was like, oh, there it goes. So if you're on any of those medications, you still have to do a lifestyle. So because the lifestyle, you can't just keep eating like butter and fat and crap and think that your cholesterol is going to be better while you're fighting it with a medication. People do that. I see diabetics all the time, and I'm not kidding. I mean, all the time. They're insulin dependent, or they're just on the cusp with like metformin or something like the medication, right? But because they're on medication, they're still going to eat all the junk, and they'll just take, I'm like, this is not how this works. Yeah. Because you don't realize, and this is where I think that a lot of medical practitioners fall down, no offense, but they're not training the person that you're actually making your body work harder. Just like when people go on SSRIs or they go on antidepressants or something like that, you have to do the work. You can't just go on it and think, well, it's going to do the work for me. And this is the unmotivated factor of these things. So when you're talking about these weight loss drugs or having surgery, I'm sort of going in the backside of this going, let's do it because you have a health issue. I'm all for it. However, the downside of this is if you don't know how to do a lifestyle change and change your neural pathways, which the medication's doing for you, it's rewiring you, and you don't do the cognitive piece of it and the exercise piece of it to reinforce that, when you go to come off, guess what's coming?
Yeah.
All that weight, because you haven't done the work that maintains the lifestyle that your brain is now set at. So you will only have those results for X amount of time unless you stay on it forever and ever and ever, which I think is going to be inevitable for a lot of people, because that's why I think they're making the pill form of it, because I think that people are not going to be able to do it because they're not doing the work, and not because it's their fault. They're not being told that they need to do the work, because I'm only seeing a handful of people that I know, millions of people probably out there doing this, and they're not getting, I do know that some of the med spas are doing the education because that's what they're geared for. Yep. You have to come in, you have to do group, you have to do the work. But I know primary care is not, I'm sure there's some, but
they have
some
no
of the
time
people,
for that.
They don't educate. If they give them a sheet of things, you're lucky. I'll say, what did you get to have instructions on this? Nothing. Okay. And I know someone who took this, the Saxenda, which is the pill you take every day. That was before the newer forms of it come. There was no education about the Saxenda. This was even before I knew what Saxenda was, and I had heard about it, but she got really sick on it, didn't eat, ended up falling down, hurting herself, because no one told her, you have to eat, you have to do these things. You can't just starve yourself. And, because it takes your craving to eat away, because it drops your dopamine levels about the, your pleasure center. So you have no reason to want to eat. So you have to force yourself to eat. Because your body still needs sugar, protein, and all those things, but it needs the natural forms of it. But, that's what it does. And so you have to force yourself to have calories, 700 at the very least. And that's not maintainable if you think that if you come off the shot, you're never going to be able to do the 700 to 1200 calories to stay in that zone.
That's a minuscule amount of calories.
Healthfully, if you don't do the work. If you stay if you get down to your goal weight, say it's 5'2", 140 pounds, right? Or it should be about 120. So if we get down to 140 pounds at 5'2", and we've never been there before, and you're 50 years old, you're never going to be able to, and I say this with all honesty, you're never going to be able to hold that 150 pounds or that 140 pounds for very long if you do not train your brain into a lifestyle of being able to maintain 1200 calories, because the 1200 calories will maintain you at the same weight. If you start going back up to 3, 4, 5, 6,000 or more calories, you're going to go right back up faster than you can count. And 1200 calories is your hold point for people. Now, 700 calories is not. So right now, if you have 700 calories on the shot or on the bypass stuff, with the sleeve, you are able to do that because you have support from the medication. But if you bypass it and you learn to bypass the calorie count while you're on it, you're messing with your brain, which then messes with your pancreas, which messes with your liver, which messes with your kidney. So you're doing more damage. Yeah. That's why you can't do that. But people aren't getting educated on that. And I think it's so important because we're in a culture now of okay, the obesity is being the obesity. They're not talking about the addiction. They're talking about obesity is being managed with medication. Nobody's talking about we have to manage the addiction that's creating the obesity. We're treating the symptom of the problem, not the problem.
Right.
And that's my go-to point today is really we are treating the wrong thing. We have to treat that, but we have to be doing this other thing. And not enough people are doing that. And people are learning to bypass it. Same thing they did with the sleeve and with the bypass surgery is you can just blow past it, right? You're not losing, 5 to, I'm going to sneeze. Hold on. Excuse me. You're not doing, 5 to 7 pounds or, 2 to 3 pounds a week or 5 to 7 pounds a week, depending on your weight, right? You're doing 1 pound a week, if that, because what are you doing? Well, I'm on the shot, so I can eat whatever I want. Yeah. No, you can't. I've heard so many people say, I'm on the shot, I can eat whatever I want. No, you can't.
Yeah.
Well, you can. However, yes, you can, but not if you want to lose weight.
It's such a bold misunderstanding of the concept.
Right. And so I've had people in my life tell me, well, my grandmother or my aunt or someone else who has no medical background or whatever they said I can eat whatever I want because they had the sleeve or they had the bypass and I can do that. Guess what? They didn't keep their weight off.
Yeah.
Why are you listening to them? Like, that doesn't work. But they're like, well, you can be on the shot and you can eat whatever you want. No, you can't.
Yeah.
Because if you do that, you're going to be right back where you were. And I tell people you're going to be more, because that's a diet. That's not lifestyle. This is this is the good way I can see any of these medications working, just like the bypass surgeries, is that they are supposed to help you rewire your brain to get into lifestyle. And you have to do that other piece of exercise and eating correctly to be able to do it. That doesn't mean you have to, and you won't want to eat a lot. So it's not like you have to starve yourself, but you can't sit down and eat 100 calorie packs and cake and then not count it and think that you're going to be able to do this. And that's the food addiction piece. That's where we sit with that. And we have the messages, if you have someone in your life that goes, you're fine, you're on the shot, you're gonna lose weight. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
And I see people stall out, and then to get them jump forward, we have to have like motivational sessions, like a couple in a row, to get them back on track. Like the woman I was telling you about that's in my practice, that, she had a massive life event. I get it. And she gets it. And that's what happened. And now we're back on track and we started losing weight again. And she saw it. And I said, we've gone a couple months now and we need to get back on track for your own health, because her death of her person in her life came from some of these issues.
And once you get here and get successful at that, it's such a great tool to have in the bag for everything else in your life. One of the biggest changes you can make is grab a hold of your weight and your eating, and grab a hold of your finances. Mm-hmm. Because those principles that you learn and you apply can be applied to life in general. You find out you have power over your outcomes. It's kind of liberating.
Well, yeah. And I think that that's such a great thing. Yes, because it's across the board on anything.
Right.
But here's the thing, and I'm not saying it because it's the negative, it's just because of the psychology piece, is that I see people who don't have that piece, is that they don't ever look, and it's so awful to say it in extremes, but it's so true. They very rarely ever look at it, let alone know about the fact that this is about, you have control over your outcomes. It doesn't have to be this way. And I hear people tell me, like, I don't have any control over it.
Yeah.
And when I hear that, I cringe internally, sometimes outwardly, if I know them really well, right? Because some clients I can do that with. And then people in my personal life, when they say that, I'm like, I don't have to. Yeah. I don't have to hold the professional stance with them.
That's the problem, though. That lack of understanding you have power over your outcomes.
But that's the problem, not what we're treating. We're not treating that. We don't talk about that. That's right. And that's what I if I get the lucky, wonderful privilege of being able to sit with someone and have some educational moments to say, we have to be looking at your accountability, responsibility, and that you have control over your outcomes here to a large degree, because no one else is telling them that.
Yeah.
And I still get feedback on that of like, no, I don't. Because, but I'll say, because why? Why don't you have control? Well, I just don't. Yeah, you do. And then I make it very basic. You have control over everything you buy, for adults. And for adults that have kids, I say you have control over everything they eat, because it's what you bring into the house, when you take them to fast food, when you take them to whatever. And as an aside, here's another piece to this. All the fast food places, and I won't name some of them, just put them all in there. All the fast food places are getting damaged from this new wave of medication and stuff, because people are going less. Yeah. So they're trying to make it more appealing. So they're going towards more healthy options, and also lowering prices so that they get people in, because it's hurting their business. So that's going to be
Taco Bell's late night push.
Taco Bell, McDonald's, like $5 for two Big Macs and 2 large fries and 2 Cokes. And that's not for 2 people. That's for 1. And then add a 10-piece McNugget. Okay. That's like 3 days worth of food, by the way.
Yeah.
That's 3 days worth of food that people will eat in one sitting and still have. That's like lunch. That makes me want to throw up. But to eat that way, there's an emotional component, because I will ask people if they've had, because I do food logs with people and everything. I ask people, what did you feel and I train people to get into the habit of not, but usually at the initial outset of saying, what do you feel before you eat? Yeah. They're like, what do you mean? Right? It's like, what do you feel? Well, I'm hungry, but are you? What does hunger feel like versus not hunger? People don't know.
Yeah.
Right? It's so amazing. So there's a lot of components.
It's not physiological hunger.
No,
it's mental hunger.
It's mental, emotional hunger. Yeah. It's not that you're hungry. You are like, oh, I can spend $5, or it's noon, so I'm supposed to eat. No, just because it's noon doesn't mean you have to eat. And if it is noon, you haven't eaten in a few hours. Why are we having 2 Big Macs? Why are we having 20 McNuggets? I'm going to pick on McDonald's. Or why are we having half a bucket of fried chicken and 2 tacos? Because they combine those, or why are we, having a half a pizza and a salad? Because you have a salad doesn't make it healthy. Right. And a salad with ranch dressing and Caesar dressing is not also healthy. People like, I had a salad because they had lettuce in it, but then you added bacon and bacon bits and cheese and eggs, and you want a salad with an egg in it, fine. But we've just added pasta salad into the salad with, you go to Whole Foods.
Those dried cranberries with all the sugar
on them, all the crystallized. Yeah. So if you go to Whole Foods, because people think Whole Foods is your best bet, right? I love Whole Foods. I'm a foodie, right? Whole paycheck. So you can't get out of there without your whole paycheck. But one side, if you ever notice on the salad bar, if you've ever been into a Whole Foods or into an Aldi, one side of the salad bar is all healthy, really healthy food choices. And I would say you come around the corner and half that other side or a quarter of that other side is. The remainder is pasta dishes. Now they're all made healthy, like they have kale and all this stuff, but you watch how, you have 2 ounces of like their kale strawberry salad, which is delicious. You've got 175 calories just off of that. Not because of the kale and strawberries. It's because they put it in a sugared dressing that's loaded with calories.
Yep.
It's a creamy dressing. Then you go to the peanut noodle, Asian peanut noodle. Now, I would say if you're going to have the Asian peanut noodles, just have those, make that your lunch instead of having the entire salad with that, because you're adding in all this stuff. And it's like, oh, I'm having a salad. Stop lying to yourself that you're having a salad if you're adding in all those extras, because that's not salad.
Yep.
Salad is all the natural things that are not added in with any mayonnaise, Russian dressing, ranch dressing, Italian dressing. Eat things that are the natural things. Yep. Like if you want quinoa or tabbouleh or hummus, that's different. But don't do those other things unless you just do those. Don't do both. That's not a salad.
So hard. The whole part about having it in the house. I've got a 19-year-old in the house now.
Yep.
It's like I'm coming home and they say, we made some mac and cheese. And I go, no, I can't. I'm not going to eat that.
Right.
I want to.
Right.
Love mac and cheese like anybody else.
But... Because now there's an emotional pull when you hear it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What does it do to your brain when you think, if I say want mac and cheese,
brings me back to being a kid. It's nostalgia.
Right. And so, and that has an emotional context to it, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. And then you're more likely to be like, oh, I just have a bite out of the pan.
Yeah.
And that bite turns into a bowl.
Oh, they leave the leftovers in the fridge.
Right.
And it's like, no one's going to know. But
right. Exactly.
You have to be fighting that all the time.
Well, and the other thing is, and that doesn't mean you can't have it.
Right.
It just means you have to be active in your choice to make it and know that your brain is doing that, because, like I just said, I'll just have a taste. The biggest thing you can do for yourself is don't put your brain, that's not anything else, don't put your brain in the position to bolster the craving, because once you take that bite, it's not one bite.
Yep.
Now it's 6 bites, and now you're into a whole bowl. And you didn't mean to eat it at all. Now you're just eating to eat.
Right.
And now you're training your brain to release dopamine and be like, oh, this was good. It felt good. So the more, and then you ate the carb with crappy cheese on that one.
Yeah.
When you say the Kraft one. And now, because you've done that, what is your brain doing? Your brain's going, oh, in about an hour, I'm going to want something else, because now I didn't have any protein.
Yep.
And Kraft macaroni and cheese, God love the company for making it. That's not protein.
Nope.
You're not eating, a piece of cheese. You're eating fake cheese,
pasta and fake cheese,
and chemicals.
You got nothing. The whole thing with me in my weight loss was buying time. In other words, I would eat stuff that I'm not going to want to eat for 2 or 3 or 4 more hours.
Right.
And mac and cheese doesn't do that at all. You're ready to eat 10 minutes later.
Well, and the fact that people can sit down and eat an entire box.
Yeah.
Or an entire pizza, or I have no shame to tell you I could do all of those things, and I would feel very sick.
Yeah.
But I can do that. but I've also known that like I know what happens, and I know what happens as the outcome on many levels. I'll want more, I'll feel sick, I'll do it again, and it makes me fat, and that makes a problem for me. Right? Because it's a lot. If you think about if you pack on 5 or 10 pounds, even when you go on vacation, which I've never understood how people can do that, because I usually lose weight on vacation because I'm much more active than I am in my daily sedentary sit in my office lifestyle. But when they do, right, which I know I do, I was being facetious, I do know how they gain weight. But when you do, it's like you've just added on, imagine holding 2 bags of potatoes. Walk around with 2 bags of potatoes a day and then put them down after the day and be like, wow, that's what 10 pounds feels like to drop. It's a big difference. Huge.
Yep.
So anyway, I'm looking at the clock, and I know I have my lovely friend coming in behind me to do his show today. So I would say that the takeaway today, because people always say, what am I going to do with this information? Well, first of all, there's a lot of information here, but if you can, because you can't go back and you can't reparent yourself from childhood, but you can in a different way. As an adult, if you're listening, what you need to be doing is be mindful. That means be aware.
Mm-hmm.
Be aware that your brain is constantly monitoring for cues in your environment that you were taught as a child. It's constantly monitoring for those to do the things that it was trained to do. So that means you have to be on top of that and make active, good, healthy choices. And if you don't, that's not the end of the world, but be more mindful and be active in your participation of intentionally eating. People get into that whole thing about, oh no, that's so like weird and all that. Actually, no, it could save your life. It might not, because, you could drop dead today. I could too, and I'm a healthy eater, and exercise and all those things. I'm always like, oh, I'm going to be that person. But, it actually matters. And if you don't want to be in a food addiction and you don't want health issues, whether it's being overweight, underweight, diabetes, heart disease, cardiovascular stuff, eye disorders, all, you got to have some awareness that your brain is being trained neurologically to just keep going to the crap. And the more you do it, the more it is. So,
you have control over your brain though.
Yes, you do. But people don't buy into that. But yes, you do. You have lots of control over your brain. That's why we can rewire it.
Yep.
You wired it the way it is, so you can unwire it and rewire it. So, all right, you guys have a great 4th of July. I will be back next week, maybe to continue more of this conversation, or we'll move on to maybe something about self-awareness and proprioception. I couldn't think of the word. Proprioception.
Proprioception.
Yes.
Ooh, new word. I gotta look that up.
Proprioception. Yeah. All right. You guys have a great week.